4 months ago, I had the misfortune, or possibly the good fortune, to be rushed into hospital. I was in intensive care in an isolation room for 3 days and was incredibly ill. And when I then came out of hospital, I then could do nothing but sleep for about 20 hours a day for 3 weeks. I had no energy, couldn't even think clearly. And in that time, I had a message from a friend of mine asking me whether I'd heard of something called Sizzling Minerals. So there are times in your life when you have one of those conversations where you can look back on it and go, that was the time when. And this led to me having a conversation with a chap by the name of Peter Willoughby. Peter is the major shareholder in a company called Simply Naturals. And the core product of Simply Naturals is something called Sizzling Minerals. What happened to me, and I'm not given to being, open to sensationalism, was nothing short of spectacular. Within a minute of taking one of these, I noticed the difference that was going on. Within, I would say, about 20 minutes, my energy was coming back. And since then, the transformation has been nothing short of extraordinary. The story that Peter told me about his reason as to why he got involved in this company, why he actually began Simply Minerals, is the purpose of this particular recording. If you're looking for something perhaps that you want to do, but something that makes a difference, there are many companies out there that are just in business, but this company is a business which is literally on a mission. It's about education, and it's about informing people and having them try this product, Sizzling Minerals. But it's the conversation that I had with Peter that was what changed my whole outlook. It is a jaw-dropping story, and what I wanted to do was to put this on film so that you yourself could actually hear from Peter directly as to what happened to him and what it was that actually made him set this business up. So, I'm with Peter now, and without any kind of further ado and no pressure, what I want is for Peter to actually talk to you about what it was that happened to him and why, as I said, why we're here today. So, Peter, this story, you and I spoke, I don't know whether you're aware, I don't think you were, that I was ill, but I was being completely wasted. You and I had a conversation, and I know you have this conversation with a lot of people. Tell us what happened. I mean, this was when you were 17, right?
That's right, yes.
So, a fair while ago.
Too many years, I think, isn't it?
So what happened?
Okay, let's go right back to 1980, in fact, and it was August 1980. I was minding my own business, just riding along on a motorcycle, and a chap driving the other way in his lorry, totally drunk, absolutely didn't know where he was, what he was doing, and he just hit me head on. So not only did I smash into the front of this lorry of his, through the windscreen, out the windscreen on the back, off the flat back of his lorry onto the road. So I had this huge head-on collision, and this poor chap, he decided that he wasn't going to stay around anymore, popped his lorry into reverse, reversed out, and the lorry wheels went over me, and put it into first gear, drove forward once again. The lorry wheels went over me. So right across the whole of my body, I had 2 lots of these lorry wheels that totally and utterly rendered me a bag of broken bones.
Was he trying to kill you?
Not deliberately, I don't think. I really think he was so drunk that he was totally unaware of what he was doing. Whether drink is an excuse anymore or not, I don't know, and that's politics that we won't get into. Yeah. But the facts still remain that there I was, broken to pieces, lying on the road, having been run over not once but twice, also having endured a full head-on impact, of which, incidentally, the impact speed was estimated at being around 100 miles an hour. And if you think about it, I'd not long pulled out of a side road, so maybe I was 25 to 30, no more than that. Right. So this chap must have been doing 60 plus miles an hour for that sort of impact speed to have taken place.
Okay, so next,
well, needless to say, I was shoveled up from the road and popped on a stretcher into the local hospital. I was unconscious. I was on life support for almost 2 weeks, I didn't know anything, I wasn't aware of anything. It wasn't till I came around, even then I really wasn't totally aware of who I was and what I was doing. Because of the nature of the impact, I had brain problems, I had a fractured skull. Let's look at it this way, every bone in my body was broken except for my spine and my right arm. Fractured skull, the whole of my face from this side was just pulled off in a flap, my eye was out, this eye was stitched up, this eye was so badly bruised I couldn't see, so I had no vision literally for 2 to 3 weeks after I gained consciousness, and everything was trussed up like a turkey is a term that was used. You know, pins, weights hanging off my legs, arms up in the air, braces around my neck and my back, just about everything. It was a pretty awful sight to behold. A lot of friends came to visit me, and again I didn't know this until after the event, and some of their girlfriends had to walk away because of the pure state that I was in.
Yeah,
I was in an absolute mess.
Yeah, I bet. So operations, how long were you in bed for? What next?
Okay, let's forward this on a bit, and I'll cut out some of the gory elements here. I remained in a hospital bed for over 3 months, endured countless operations to the point now where I've actually lost count of how many I had at that point in time. 18, 20, 24, I don't know. You know, a day would come and I'd go and have an operation.
This is in 3 months, in that 3 months?
In that space of 3 months.
24 operations?
Yes, it was quite horrific. Bearing in mind that certain operations couldn't be done until they knew that other parts of my body would fix. Classic one, my right femur, the top thigh, the bone exploded, and the lower part was broken, my knee was broken, so if the leg was going to come off, there was no point in fixing the tibia or fibula, the lower part of your leg, or indeed your ankle, or indeed your patella, the kneecap, until you knew that the leg was going to stay. So that was their way of thinking, that let's fix the leg first so we know we'd keep the leg, and then we'd start operating on all the other bits once we knew that they were being kept.
Wow.
So thankfully I kept the leg. Yes, I still have problems today, but they really understood what they were doing.
Okay, so this is, I've heard this is the 3rd time and I'm still shocked. So you are then fixed up, you have all these operations, you're then in a wheelchair, presumably?
Absolutely, yeah. I came out into the new year, came out of hospital in the new year, and again, it hits you hard. Once you're in that hospital bed for all of those months, you really start to think, you know, not what life's all about. You don't go into that sort of detail. I was 17-year-old at the time, so you imagine what's going through my mind. Being a young, fit, very active lad, to being relegated into a wheelchair is not easy to comprehend.
No.
But I remember watching the trees, you know, during the later summer months, the leaves were green, the trees were full, and then when I left it was cold. I believe actually there was snow on the ground. I had to be lifted into a wheelchair. Everywhere at home, when I got back to my parents, obviously where I was living, I had to be carried around. I couldn't walk upstairs, I had to be carried upstairs. I couldn't go to the toilet, I had to be assisted. You know, it really was a painful part of my life. But one needs to persevere, one needs to get on. And one of my short-term ambitions was obviously to get out of a wheelchair, to get up and to be not necessarily independent, but to be walking again. So I would struggle. I'd go to the hospital for physio, the ambulance would pick me up, take me to the hospital, I'd do my physio, come back, and this went on for many, many, many months. But all during that period of time, one thing that used to get to me that was aware is that all of that time that I had not enjoyed life was time that I'd wasted. You know, all of those months in the hospital bed. Needless to say, I was getting back up on my feet again. Literally, I got myself up on crutches. I was a skeleton, no muscles, no strength.
So how long were you in a wheelchair for, and how long did it take you to then go from wheelchair to crutches?
Oh, I was in a wheelchair, probably out of the wheelchair for probably 24 months.
Wow.
Didn't use it all that time. The earlier months I had to use it, but then I tried to stand up and use crutches. I would do a few paces with crutches, be totally exhausted and have to sit back down again. And I actually had a knockback where one of the operations that that I had earlier on actually went wrong. The bone got infected, it flared up, so I had another succession of operations. So I had to go back in hospital again, and that was actually almost 3 months again when I was back in hospital for a second time. So that progress I'd made in the first instant had actually been clawed back. So I was really almost back to square one again. But again, I came out from that point, again back in the wheelchair, standing up on crutches, and one of my first amazing steps I remember, and this was absolutely terrifying for me, was to actually walk out of the front door. There was a small step of about 4 or 5 inches at my parents' house where I had to step onto the pavement. Just to make that one small step was terrifying. It was one of these little instances that I thought, shall I do it, shan't I? I've got to do it, I must. And every single day I'd find something just to push myself further forward.
So what was the terrifying bit, what if I fall, or is it you're stepping out in the world? Or what?
It's stepping out into the world, it was psychological. Yes, of course there was the fear of falling. Of course there was the fear of injury. There was the fact that, do I have the strength to do this? But it was actually stepping out and doing something that I had been prevented from doing. It was in effect breaking new boundaries. Coming out of your comfort zone, and I'll use that phrase because that's a phrase I think we should all understand. Stepping out of your comfort zone.
Literally in your case.
Yeah. So it was tough, it was hard, but as the days and weeks went by, I'd set myself a goal that, tomorrow I've got to do 2 more steps. The next week I want to be down that part of the road. There was a corner in the road that was about 100 yards away. I thought, that's where I've got to get to. That's what I've got to work towards. These 2 or 3 steps every day are great, but by the end of the month, that's where I want to be. And I got there. I couldn't get back. I had to wait for everyone to come and pick me up. I remember that. So I got here and I couldn't get back, and they'd come along in my wheelchair and take me back in the wheelchair. But I made it. I got there. And eventually I got there again and I got back.
Right.
So that was my progress. I could monitor my progress. I could gauge my progress. And in today's corporate world, people would say that's setting goals and achieving them. Not just saying I'm going to do this and sit back and do nothing. I had a reason to do that, and because I wanted to get better, and because I wanted to go out in the world and enjoy life again, I focused on it and I did it.
So what was the prognosis? What had you been told you were going to look forward to or not?
Great point. Prognosis was interesting. At that time I was fixed up. Screws, pins, plates, wire, long bars like this, and I've got most of this back at home as trinkets. And the prognosis was, I was 17 years old then, they said by the time you hit your late 20s, early 30s, look forward to getting back into a wheelchair again. That was what I was told. They said within the 5 to 10 years of having the accident, I'd be looking for hip replacements and potentially both knees and something doing with my ankles. At the time there was nothing perfected with ankle joints. What they used to do was to fuse them, and in one ankle in particular they said that will probably be fused, but get ready for a complete life full of future operations. So needless to say, being told just as I'd got out of a wheelchair onto crutches that in sort of less than 20 years' time I'd be back in a wheelchair again wasn't something I was happy with.
Can you just clarify, so that is because you would have operations, or because other conditions would kick in, or what?
Because of the nature of the injuries that I had. The big condition that everyone was focused on was arthritis, of course, osteoarthritis.
Right.
Where the joints had been broken through the centre of the joint, joint replacements were key, but also mainly it was due to the bone damage and the seizing up of joints that they were focused on that statement.
Okay, and that was by the end of your 20s they were talking about?
At the end of my 20s into my 30s was when they said I should expect to be back in the
By this stage
again.
you would have been in your early 20s presumably?
At that stage they were talking to me in my late teens, very early 20s, late teens, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And what impact did that have on you?
Oh, crazy, Paul. Think about it. You're just about fighting to get yourself out of a wheelchair. You're fighting to get back up and running again, and doom and gloom for the future. Yes, you know, I was in my late teens, early 20s, and 30s seemed a long way off. But in reality, it's not. So always there's this little seed at the back of your mind, and it certainly planted one for me that I've carried on all the way through life, that says, I don't want that happening to me. What can I do to prevent it?
What I'm interested in also is the fact that you even had that thought. Most people, when they're told by the doctors, look, this is what you're going to look forward to, go, oh, okay, fair enough. So is there something in you in particular? Are you a stubborn individual? Or?
Stubborn could be a good word, actually. I don't know, maybe I'm a fighter, maybe I'm slightly different, maybe I want a bit more from life than most other people want. Maybe I just wanted my life back.
Yeah.
I was 17 years old at the peak of my fitness. You know, gymnastics, swimming, trampolining, you know, boxing. I really was a young, fit character. But it's almost the prime of your life, if you think about it.
Yeah, yeah.
And to lose that and to be, you know, confined almost to a wheelchair, and to fight to get out of a wheelchair to get onto crutches, only to be told to look forward to the wheelchair again, is not something that I think anyone should take lightly.
No.
And in some respects, a doctor's always got to give you the worst case scenario. Okay.
Okay. The question I've got for you:
Yeah.
what was your view of, you know, Western medicine, doctors, or whatever at that stage?
At that stage, I didn't know any different. At that stage, and probably like most people today, I relied on the intelligence of the doctors. Bearing in mind what we're dealing with here was orthopaedics. Orthopaedic doctors, in my view, are fantastic. They repair damage. People have likened it to high-level carpentry. It's a lot more than that. Of course, it's very sophisticated medical work that these orthopaedic doctors do. And hey, I wouldn't be here today without them. But indeed, you know, when you're told something like that, you believe it.
Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah,
Most
exactly.
people do, right?
You believe it. Did I question it? I didn't question it, but what I did question is, was there something I could do about it?
Okay.
I did question that, yes.
Amazing, actually. I mean, like I said, most people I think would be a bit resigned, but I guess when you've got the future in terms of, well, it's either dark and depressing, it does make you think.
Well, it does, and the thing is, I didn't want that. I actually didn't want that in my life. I didn't want to be back in a wheelchair. I had it in the back of my mind that I would be back in a wheelchair, and I'd have really reduced mobility again, but I didn't want it, and I actually wanted to do something about it, without being told it can't be done.
Okay, so what were your options? Where did you go? What was your intuition telling you to go and have a look for?
I mean, at that point in my life, I hadn't at that point in my life thought necessarily about what it is I could do immediately. I actually got on with my life. I started getting back into, dare I say, the routines of life. Started going back to work, but in the back of my mind, this seed was planted. And it was saying, what is it I can do? What is it I can focus on? My diet changed. And from
Intentionally?
Intentionally, yes. Yes, I focused on diet. I would eat more salads. I would read information. For example, you know, what was good for you and what was bad for you, what the people at the time were saying.
But what took you, I mean, straight away you went to nutrition, so why? What gave you that indicator? Was it intuitive, or why did you go straight to diet?
I believed at the time, because I was quite a fit guy in my young teens. I had already read about fitness, nutrition, and as a young teenager, especially a boy, what you're looking to do, you're looking to excel in anything that you're doing from a sports point of view.
Right.
And I was very sporty,
right.
And I knew that you keep away from sugar,
right.
Even at that young age. I knew it was the breads and the wheats that would put weight on.
Oh, okay.
And I kind of understood a little bit about it, not enough to be very up to speed on it, but I knew that the bodybuilders would eat a lot of broccoli and turkey, as indeed they still do today. But I kind of was slightly educated and had a slight knowledge about it.
Right, okay. So your belief systems were already kind of certainly in place, if you like.
Yes, that's right. But what I really wanted to know is taking that the next stage. I studied things like the oils, the omega-3, 6, 9 oils for the body, and also I looked at other areas as I was going through life. What is it I need to do? For example, I was told to keep my weight down because excess weight when you've got broken joints and broken limbs can cause problems.
Sure.
So my diet was something that was on focus, and I believe it's something we should all focus on today.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't realise at the time that my diet was devoid of many of the nutrients my body needed, and that came in the later years. But there was a focus on diet at that point in time.
Right. Okay. So what next?
Carry on. Life went on, and the years went by, and dare I say, the internet came of age.
Right.
And I was working for a very good bank in London, where I was allowed, thankfully, to use the internet. And during some spare time, I would research, and I would research literally what was good for arthritis, what was good for broken bones, what can help prevent illness and future problems, specifically looking at arthritis and anything related to broken bones and bone damage. So what I then discovered, having done a lot of research, was a chap called Linus Pauling, and there's a few other doctors that I can come on to later, but Linus Pauling actually said something quite interesting that isn't really spoke about, or he actually wrote it, and it was to do with the Ester-C product that he had put together. And one of the comments was that he was captured to have said maybe he should have looked at why the body wasn't absorbing vitamin C as it should have done, rather than providing and inventing a vitamin C that was more absorbable to the body. And that kind of stuck in my mind. So then I started to research that reason why. Why aren't the nutrients being absorbed by the body as the body would like to do? And to cut a long story short, a lot of the documents I'd come across related that the inability of the body to perform correctly with the nutrients in our diet was because the body is demineralised. And I wanted to know more, and that really was the start of everything. When I picked up on this little thing about the body is demineralised, which was the reason why it wasn't performing in so many different areas, not just digestion, that really struck a chord with me, and that's really where I started to explore and investigate minerals.
Okay, so you're on the trail, it would seem, of something significant.
Yes.
You're exploring minerals, then what?
I actually got an aeroplane at one point
to
go and visit 2 different companies that suggested they had some very good mineral products that would be excellent and exactly for what I wanted. And
so already, is there a distinction between good mineral companies and not good mineral companies? Why these two?
I looked again. There was limited information on the internet at that point, and the internet was just coming of age. But I found 2 that were American based, and I just thought, hey, I'll tie a holiday in with the fact that I could go and see them and learn some more. And that was where the penny really dropped, is when I finally visited these companies, because I learned something very important. This is probably the most critical point about what we're discussing today, and in fact probably life's most critical point, is people would say a mineral is a mineral is a mineral. Well, it's not correct in my view. In my view, there are 2 different types of minerals. One is the mineral that we have in our soil, and the other is the mineral that is contained within a plant, a fruit or a vegetable. The aluminium that we take from our soil is of a metallic form. When that aluminium is pre-digested by a plant, in the case of aluminium, for example, in broccoli or a banana, it's inert. It changes, its state changes. It becomes plant-derived mineral or a food state mineral. So that was something I wasn't aware of until I actually went to America and understood that there are 2 forms of minerals. And one form is extracted from potentially, dare I say, mineral salts, and the word salt is quite an abused term, but we can touch on that a bit later. And the other source of minerals come, and in our case, come from a prehistoric deposit of vegetation that had never fossilised, and we actually use pure water to extract plant source minerals or plant derived minerals from that vegetate.
Okay, so you've just mentioned about the difference. What is the significance of the difference between these different kind of minerals? And also, I have been buying this expensive Himalayan rock salt stuff, thinking that that's is that, what is that?
It's what it says. It's rock salt. And would you like to eat a rock?
Right. Okay.
Really, the answer is no. Salt's quite an abused term because anything that has this taste, and we recognise this taste, and we call it salt.
Yeah.
Sodium chloride is a manufactured mineral, and that's what is table salt.
Right.
But we bundle up these other minerals, and when we've got that salty taste, we call them salt. Hence the term rock salt.
Right.
Now, rock salts, by definition, are usually a combination of metallic minerals that people grind up and actually can use as mineral supplements. The body doesn't particularly like rock salts, and personally I believe there's very minimal benefit from them, but when the body is demineralised, as most people's are, then even the slightest bit of benefit can actually show quite well.
Okay.
So we go back to the fundamental differences between a metallic mineral and a plant-derived mineral. Very simple, it's not rocket science. A plant, through its roots, will consume minerals that are in the soil. Whilst those minerals are in the soil, they are indeed a metallic mineral. As soon as the plant absorbs and digests those minerals and takes them into the plant or the fruit or the vegetable itself, it will add a hydrogen atom to that mineral as it goes through the process, and you'll end up with a mineral that is pre-digested within the plant. Now, we all know if we eat food, if we eat broccoli, tomatoes, any form of fruit or veg, then the body actually likes to enjoy what we're eating, and those minerals that are within that food are processed to the point by the plant that they are literally 1/10,000th of the size of a human blood cell, so the body can happily absorb them and utilise them. The other thing that's quite important with a plant source mineral is that it is water soluble. Okay, so the body can accept that,
Okay.
whereas a metallic mineral is not water soluble, and that again is quite an important point. The size of the actual mineral itself, when it's pre-digested by a plant, is thousands of a times smaller than the normal metallic mineral. So it's quite fundamental. And what we could say is, I could hold a piece of iron ore here, or I could hold a piece of broccoli. Both contain iron minerals. Which minerals is your body going to enjoy best? It's the minerals that are in the broccoli, and that's exactly where we are with our plant-derived minerals.
Okay. And so can the body absorb metallic minerals or not?
No, it can't. I mean, by default, a metallic mineral is something that the body doesn't like. What some companies do, they will chelate them, or chelate is the other pronunciation.
Right.
Chelation or chelation. And what that usually means, it will be bonded to another form of acid, usually a citric acid, that tries to interpret what a plant source mineral would be like for the body. So in effect, it tries to fool the body into actually absorbing the metallic mineral and breaking it down, which it doesn't actually understand. So it's not, chelated minerals, pop them down the toilet.
Right. Okay. That's clear. Okay. So you've gone to the States. You've
Yes.
seen these two companies,
Yes.
and presumably they had plant-derived minerals.
One did, yes.
Right.
Yes, one told me the story of how they would extract, using pure water, the minerals from what was prehistoric vegetate, as we touched on before.
Yeah. Okay.
And that rang a bell with me. That I could see, I could see the process in that. And the other company I went to see actually had what we would call Himalayan rock salt minerals, or indeed they would call it rock salts, which were just actually derived from a prehistoric lake bed that were metallic in form.
Right. Okay.
And the only two things that really what made me question was the price. There was such a significant difference in price between the metallic minerals and those plant source minerals that I needed to ask. You know, why was one almost 20 times the price of the other one?
Right.
And that rang alarm bells, and I needed to know why.
Right.
And it was at that point where the penny dropped that I really needed to have what my body wanted, which were minerals from a plant source.
Okay. So, you presumably started taking these at that stage, is that right?
Well, I did, yes. I flew back to the UK. I said to the company quite openly, how do you sell them? They had a 1 litre bottle of the mineral liquid, or liquid minerals, just pure water with the minerals, you know, suspended in the water. And I'd buy a box of, 20, 24 at a time, have them shipped back to the UK, and that went on for several years.
Right. Did you notice anything when you were taking them?
No, I wouldn't say a huge amount. No, I like to feel I was quite, although I got many, problems with my broken bones and limbs, from a health point of view, I believe and I'd like to feel probably just like the average person today, that I was fit, I was healthy, and I was okay. Did I see an increase in energy at that point in time? Not particularly. I like to feel I was quite fit. Did I see anything majorly? Probably the only thing I would notice, and I would say at that point, is colds and flus. I wasn't getting the colds and flus anymore. That was one thing I did notice.
Mm-hmm.
So of anything, yes, I felt good anyway, but I knew that if I wanted to prevent, I had to do something about it, and the minerals were the first port of call.
Okay. And so how long a period of time, how long have you been taking them for now, by the way?
Oh, God, that goes back some years now. It was probably towards the middle of the 1990s, 96, 97.
Right.
That's probably when I started taking them.
Right.
So it's been a good few years now.
So what age were you when you started taking them?
Oh, that's a great question, Paul. I can't remember that.
But
No.
what I've got in
Yes.
my mind is what the doctors were saying about your
Okay.
late 20s, early 30s.
Okay, I was probably the early 30s at the time.
And,
yes.
and how were you? I mean, the doctors were saying you were going to be in a wheelchair and all this.
I was, my joints were painful.
Yeah.
They were always painful. The pain never went. There wasn't a day goes by where I didn't have some form of pain. I'm probably more at ease now and have less pain and discomfort than I've ever had. And as I'm getting older in my years, the pain and discomfort isn't getting any worse. If anything, it's getting better. So going back to that point, I tried to do everything, as I mentioned before, to keep myself out from getting popped back in a wheelchair again. And then again, I started to mineralise. I was watching my diet, and naively, believing that the foods I was eating were all very good for me.
Yeah.
But again, the education process continues.
Yeah.
And ultimately, and where the big eye opener happened is I was coming back from a trip. I went out to Australia, flew back via Malaysia, and this is going back in the early part of the 2000s. And I got back into the UK, and I was coughing, and I was coughing, without being ill.
Yeah.
And my partner at the time said, you've really got to go and see a doctor. And I said, I feel good. I feel really, quite healthy, but I couldn't stop coughing. And we didn't really know why. So I went to see the local GP, and, given his due, never been to the doctors since my operation with any form of, cold or flu or anything like that. And the good old GP just put his stethoscope on my chest, asked me to breathe in and breathe out.
Yeah.
And it was one of these things he couldn't understand why, and he just thought he would check. And I'm grateful he did. And he just said one thing that was quite interesting. He said, your left lung isn't working. It's not inflating. And he didn't know why. I don't know why.
Right.
And he said, do you feel out of breath when you run? I said, with the greatest respect, I can't run. What happens when you walk fast? I said, sorry, can't do that either. And he just said, okay, just going to send you for an x-ray. And it's kind of one of those moments where I thought, I don't want to go for an x-ray, I don't want to do any of this, I just want to go home. And he sent me for an x-ray to the local hospital. When I turned up for an x-ray at the local hospital, I could dwell on the story, but I won't, but everything just went mad. it was almost that people were coming out of the theatre to come and see these X-rays. People were just beside themselves with what they had discovered that that came up in my X-ray.
Were they letting on to you what that was, or was this...
No, of course not. No.
Right.
And an interesting thing there is, I will share this bit of story with everybody. A guy I went to college with, and I studied at college before I left, he was the radiographer who
Right.
actually took the X-ray.
Right.
And good guy. I said, "Hi Dave, how are you doing?" "Hi Pete, how are you?" He said, "I will have you in and out of here in a flash." I said, "Let me know what's going on." He said, "Yeah, no problem." And went in, had the picture taken. He scuttled off, tail between his legs, head down. And as he was just going out the door, I just called him and said, "Hey, what's going on?" He says, he sort of mumbled and said, "Oh, we'll let the doctors tell you." And that was it.
Right.
My whole persona just went. I kind of thought something wasn't good. And when I went outside to sit down and look at the prognosis, I knew it wasn't good. Within 30 minutes, I was in an ambulance, blue lights flashing, sirens going, doing about 15 miles an hour, up to the Royal Brompton Hospital in London.
Right.
It's kind of interesting, dare I say, because I was thankful that the windows were blacked out because there was huge traffic jams behind me and people not, moving because of this slow ambulance.
Mm.
I kind of felt a bit embarrassed, to be honest with you.
Mm.
I didn't realise why I was there. Still didn't know why I was there. Why I was there.
So you get to the hospital, sirens blazing, created all this commotion and tailbacks and sought all this attention.
Oh, amazing stuff. But do you know, it's one of these things that you just think, it's never going to happen to me. Yes, I know I've got medical problems. Yes, I know I'm full of pins and plates and screws, but you still think, I'm over it.
Yeah.
What now?
Yeah.
I just didn't know. I absolutely didn't know. They found me a bed in the Brompton immediately, and the first thing they did was to wire me up with lots of, dare I say, sensors, echocardiogram equipment, and all different types of dialysis machines, just to try and find out what my problem was. And I went straight on a saline drip as well. The little pin was put in my in my arm, and the bag of fluid was popped in there, and that was it, sir, you're confined to bed.
Right.
And I said, "What's going on? Can you tell me what's going on?" And they said, "Well, we've got to wait for a gentleman called Anthony Rickards, Professor Anthony Rickards. He's the specialist that will be seeing you." And I did actually ask, "What about the specialist that's here at the hospital now?" "Oh, no, you've got to wait for Mr. Rickards to come back." I believe he was lecturing, a very prominent professor of heart surgery, and I believe he was lecturing at that time, so I had to wait for him to get back. So, needless to say, the one comment that was made to me is that you're a time bomb waiting to explode, and they confined me to bed.
Wow. So you still didn't know what was going on,
No.
but now you knew you were a time bomb.
I knew I was a time bomb waiting to explode. And I'm thinking, where's this time bomb? I don't know where it is. So needless to say, I can't remember. It was probably 6 or 7 days. I waited there in the hospital bed, wired up on a drip, waiting for my tests. And it was because when they did the test, I finally realised why I had to wait. This was run to the test. They put me on one of the beds with the wheels on, down to one of the areas where they can do a thing called an angiogram. An angiogram is where they pop dye in through your groin into the main artery, and the dye will go up through your body, so you can see what's going on with the main arteries that not only go into the heart but come out from the heart.
Okay.
And you can see this on in this case, at a huge, great screen above the area where they did the test.
Right.
And this was classic. That morning, Anthony Rickards was lecturing to another group of heart surgeons that had come in from around the world to be there. So he came in and literally just rolled his hands up and said, "Right, I'm ready to go. Let's have a look at you." Lovely, jolly fellow. And they popped the anaesthetic into my groin, popped the dye in, and this whole thing lit up on this X-ray screen. And it was, to me, the untrained eye, I didn't understand what it was.
Sure.
But he looked at me and said, "Oh, look at that. You've got an aortic aneurysm." And I said, "Okay." And he said, "Oh, this isn't just any aortic aneurysm. This is a pretty serious aortic aneurysm. first thing he said to me, have you driven a car into a brick wall doing 100 miles an hour?
Wow, really?
First thing he said. I said, no, actually, I've had a head-on collision with a lorry. He said, well, what happened is the way the heart has been torn has caused the weakness in the aorta. He said, the other thing is, he said, this tear kills you. People don't survive this. People don't have this problem. He said, we never see this because people are dead. And he said, what happened to you? And I said, well, actually, back in 1980 when I had the accident, I did die. I do have straight lines in my record. I wasn't here for a short period of time, but I'm here today.
Right.
And he said, well, you shouldn't be here today because this kills people instantly. He said, the other problem we've got, he said, this aortic aneurysm, and he said, let me put this into perspective for you. He said, are you in any pain? I said, no. I said, do you feel any discomfort? I said, no. He said, well, these things grow to 2 or 3 centimetres in diameter and they're painful. Most people feel them. Usually they're much lower down in the descending aorta. Yours is in the arch.
So can I just ask, so the aorta, what is the aorta?
The aorta, and we will pop a picture up on the screen in a minute, so we can see where, we can actually see these photographs that I've got, actual scans of this.
Right.
The aorta is the main artery that comes out of the heart.
Okay.
Okay. It's the one that feeds everything.
Okay.
And it will come out the top and it will come and work its way down. And from the main aorta will be the other, I don't know if they call them tributary arteries that will come off.
Okay.
And this aneurysm was explained to me as usually 3 to 4 centimetres in diameter, very painful. You feel them, they can be controlled. Okay. They said, 5 to 6 centimetres, they become volatile. And this was interesting. And he just said, if they burst, you're dead. You've got about 30 seconds of feel-good factor, nice warm dizzy feeling, and that's it. You're no longer with us. There's nothing we can do. And he said, the problem we've got with yours, he said, look, and he showed me on the screen, and he said it's 10.5 centimetres in diameter. He said, this is absolutely enormous. He said, the largest I've ever witnessed. He said, on the aortic arch, he said, I've never seen anything like this in all of my medical career. And another thing that was quite interesting here, and a couple of things I think I really should explain. First of all, he called in, he asked my permission, could the people that I'm lecturing today come in and see this?
Right.
And of course, I'm there feeling like a hero. Yeah. I said, please bring these people in. Yes, let them in. So he brought them in and he was explaining to them about the aorta. And one of the things I picked up on was he said to this group of people, please take a look at this. I've never seen anything like this in my whole career of working in this sector. And he said, the chances are you will never see anything like this ever again. This is absolutely abnormal. He said, and he actually looked at me and said, this chap is a freak of nature. And I didn't know whether that was a compliment or not. But this is something now that is absolutely critical. This one little point, he said, look at the inside, and when the blood was pumping, you could see the blood pumping around the around this this aneurysm, and then down through the aorta. And he said the inside walls of the aneurysm and indeed the aorta are abnormally clean. He said they are too clean. And he did comment, he did ask, have you been putting acid through your arteries? Because they're like those of a fit teenager. Of course I said no. And he said usually what we find is we find some calcification. People would say furring, hardening,
right.
A little bit of plaque on the inside of the arteries.
Right.
And he said what will happen in this case, it will cause turbulence, and you will see a little bit of turbulence. He said, but in your case, there's nothing. They're abnormally clean, too clean. And then what they did is they looked at, just out of interest, they looked at the return arteries. Now there's 4 return arteries that are the ones that normally get clogged up when people have heart attacks. And indeed they'll have a bypass or a stent fitted.
Right.
And Anthony Rickards, incidentally, is one of the gentlemen that perfected the stent.
Right.
So he kind of knew his stuff.
Yeah, sure.
And he looked at the return arteries and he just went, wow. He said, you're like a teenager. He said, "You're like a young, fit child." He said, "This is absolutely abnormal.
Right.
What have you been doing?"
Right.
And of course, the penny didn't drop at that time. I was just there, mesmerised by everything that was going on, looking at something that was so tremendous. I didn't know. I was numb in some respects. And once that was over, he then came back to sit down by the bed after a couple of days and said, "Right," he said, we've got a problem with you. We don't know what to do. We've never experienced anything like this before." He said he was going to go away and consult some other people in the industry to see what views they had. He said, "For now, hold still, don't do anything, no sudden movements. This is volatile."
Wow. This is the
We don't know
exploding
what to
bomb
do.
syndrome.
Yeah. He said, "We don't know." He said, "We don't know whether this is going to last a day or another couple of years." He said, "We just don't know."
Did they have any sense about how long you'd had this for?
They didn't know. No, they asked me, and I said, "Really, I don't know." And I, repaid the question, said, "How long would it take for something like this to grow?" And he said, "It could be 2 years, it could be 5 years,
Right.
it could be longer."
Right.
He said, "But the weakness was caused, obviously, back in 1980 from the original accident."
And would he accredit the fact that your heart was so clean and in such good condition as being the reason why you were still alive?
Well, what he did say, and this is as the story sort of built up with him as well, and he became quite interested in this for various reasons. One thing that they did look at was why the insides were so clean, but more importantly, I think the term elastic comes in, because had the walls been traditional, as in most males of my age at the time, then the inside of the arterial walls would have hardened.
Sure.
So when they hardened, they become brittle. It's probably not the right term, but bang, it would explode.
Yeah.
These were flexible,
Yeah.
malleable, rubbery,
Right.
exactly as nature intended. And that was something I know that absolutely he picked up on straight away. He wanted to know why. What was I doing different? Why hadn't this thing exploded? It should have exploded. Not just why everything was clean, but why it was malleable and flexible. Anyway, going forward a couple of weeks actually, there was no way they could stent this because of many reasons. One, it was too big. One, to actually put a stent in the aortic arch is something that they, I believe, had not ever done or perfected before. And the real big problem, and this really was the big problem all along, is that right on one side of the aneurysm was the artery that fed the brain, and on the other side was the artery that fed the spine.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so most of the blood flow, up and back to the vital parts of the body would have potentially been affected if it was stented.
Right.
So they then decided that the only option was, and everyone giggles at this, was literally to cut it out, hopefully not affecting any of the other major arteries, and put a piece of Gore-Tex in its place.
And that's what they did?
Yeah, it is, literally. Literally. I mean, when you see the x-rays now, and again, we'll pop some up on screen for people to see, you can actually see this piece of Gore-Tex in. But like everything else, it wasn't a straightforward operation. We say it in jest, but it was really pretty significant. And I'll just share one thing with you, and I did touch on this before, Paul. You'll love this little thing. So here we are, being prepared for the operation. And the consultant surgeon came in and he said, "There's no easy way to put this to you, but what I'm going to do is to hold up 5 fingers." Okay. He said, first of all, because of where the aneurysm is, it's so near the artery that feeds the brain, you could actually be brain damaged following the operation. Also, because it's so near the artery that feeds the spine, you could have some paralysis and other nerve defects. And I went, okay. He said, actually, you could have a bit of both. And I'm sitting there thinking, there's 2 out of 5, it's not looking good. And then he popped the last one down. He said, if it doesn't go to plan, you might not quite make it.
And by quite not make it, he means...
I wouldn't survive.
Right, okay.
I'll be dead.
Right.
So he held up.
So you definitely won't make it.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
God. Right.
So 1 out of 5.
Yeah.
It's my chance of coming through unscathed. And what goes through your mind at that time? Okay, very interesting. I had one question. I said, what other options do I have?
Right.
And he just said nothing. There is no other option.
Right.
He said, if we leave you as you are, it will burst, you will die. He said, when, we don't know. And again, it might be it might be a day, a month, a year. We don't know. If we leave it, you're dead. So I didn't have a choice. So they prepared me, and it was only a couple of days after that that they had a slot for the operation, and they prepared me for that. And of course, lots of things are going through my mind beforehand, but I'm just ready in the pre-op, where they give you your injection to make you feel much more mellow, pre-med.
Yeah.
And I was mellow anyway, and the pre-med really didn't have any effect on me, and it was what was going around in my mind at the time. You're in one of these positions where you're thinking, I've got a 1 in 5 chance of coming out really unscathed. So what goes through your mind where you're going for an operation and potentially you might not survive? So what do you think? Do you think about the house you own, or the car that you drive, or anything that you own? In my view, no, you don't. None of that comes into play. All you can think about are the memories you have and the time you shared with the people you wanted to be with, your loved ones. Mm-hmm. And that's all that could go through my mind. All that I could think about was sharing time with my family, my parents, taking my parents on a holiday. Thankfully, I didn't look back and say, if only I had done that.
Right.
I'd taken my parents on a holiday. I'd done a lot of things with my family, and indeed a lot of things in life. But it was those memories that were closest to me. Did I care about my cars in the garage? I didn't give a hoot. Did I care about my house? Insignificant. Didn't even cross my mind. It was those little memorable, treasured moments with the people that you care about that really, really meant anything. Anyway, went into the operation. Again, unbeknown to me, long operation, very lengthy operation, I'm led to believe. And apparently I woke up, and I didn't realise I'd woke up again after the operation.
Right.
And I was screaming that my head was going to explode. Didn't know anything about it. I wasn't conscious to my knowledge, and my partner at the time said, what's happening with him? And apparently I'd got a great big blood clot on the brain.
So does that happen as a result of the operation, or this was there anyway?
It has happened apparently as a result of the operation, because the operation was such a lengthy procedure,
right.
And because they had to use a heart bypass machine.
Yeah.
It meant that there were potential complications, and indeed one of those problems was that I actually contracted a blood clot, and it was a blood clot on the brain that was growing. And because at the time, and again unbeknown to me, there's a small thin tube that was in the part of the spine that drains the spinal fluid, in preparation for the operation. If that were taken out too early, that could render me paralysed. And at the time, my partner was being told that the operation was a success. I had no major problems. It was great. It was good news. And then to be told, well, if this blood clot gets any worse, and it really was on the brink of causing problems, then that would just cause hemorrhaging in the brain, and I'd be dead anyway. And she said, what can we do? What can we do? Well, they had to take me to another hospital, the Chelsea in Westminster, to remove the blood clot from the brain. And in the meantime, they had to remove this tube from my spine, which could have led to paralysis.
Wow.
And another risk, way too early. It was taken out way too early. And my partner said, no, I'd rather him alive and in a wheelchair than dead. And if those are my choices, I want him here, I want him alive, I want him at least to say goodbye. Let's do that. And she signed it off, take the chance. Chelsea and Westminster, and again I arrived at Chelsea and Westminster. Bless her, she was knocking on the doors of the operation or the operating theatre, trying to get the surgeons to come out and see me because I was in a really bad way.
With my arm.
Subclinical disease. And subclinical disease is a term that is used for the gradual breaking down of the systems that will eventually lead to the signs and symptoms. For example, like joint pain, like type 2 diabetes. So what we need to do is we need to give our body the preventative nutrients so it can repair itself.
Okay, so where do you see this going now? I mean, you know, I've been involved with this business for a few months and I've seen what is already extraordinary growth going on. Where are you going?
The product is something everybody needs. Indeed, plants need minerals. So the scope that we have is absolutely enormous. We are a British-based company. We will step out into other countries around the world, obviously America, Australia. First and foremost, we've got to ensure that we are solid and stable here. Our growth is absolutely tremendous. Month on month, we're experiencing around 20% growth per month compound, which is just tremendous. And we're actually looking at ways that we can take the knowledge and information into Europe in a much better way, and also we're just working on taking that into America at this point in time. As far as our customer base is concerned, then there isn't anybody, every single living, breathing soul on this planet today needs minerals for optimum health. And put aside all the other nutrients you can buy. We say to people, before you take your vitamin C's and before you take any of the other supplements, ensure your diet is good from a perspective of fruit and veg, mineralise, and then see exactly what your body requires at a later stage. In most cases, once the body is mineralised, most other nutrients that the body needs we will actually get from our diets.
Right, okay. Can anybody not take these?
There's no person or animal indeed that does not need it. The question there, Paul, is would you say, does anybody not need to eat fruit and veg?
Right.
Okay, so everybody needs minerals.
Right.
We've had mothers that are pregnant taking minerals. Indeed, as far as babies are concerned, we do suggest that babies don't take minerals until they're actually onto solids. And even then, the mother really needs to call to see what the best amount would be. But absolutely everybody needs minerals.
Okay. Yeah, I can't think of anything else to say actually.
And actually to look a lot more as to what it was, I believe, that prevented this aneurysm from actually bursting.
Okay. So I'm assuming your belief then is that the minerals and the condition of your heart are...
Yeah. The conversation that day was, and this was the upshot, was that had I not been mineralised, had I not been doing what I had been doing, then by default this would have burst. A, it would never have grown to the size it did. B, the inside of my arteries would not be as clean as they are, and the term malleable as they are. That would never have happened. And consequently, as a result of the actions that I had been taking for myself, I prevented that from rupturing.
Right.
And Tony Rickards actually did look at that, and he did pick up on that and literally suggest, without actually coming out with it, that had I not been doing what I was doing with the minerals, I would be dead today.
Okay. So this was the point when we had this phone conversation. That was the point where I went, I've got to meet you and we've got to talk. Because there's something for me which intuitively it just makes sense. So when did your thought process then go from, okay, so these have had this extraordinary effect, to this business? What was that process?
it was more important for me to actually ring the guy up that I was buying from and just say, hey, thanks, this is where I am today, well done Minerals.
Right.
And I did actually do that, and he actually kind of said, well, I thought he'd be really excited for me. I thought he'd be over the moon and jumping up and down.
Yeah.
And he was like, well, yeah, actually, we do hear so many good things like this with people, taking the minerals, especially. Then he went off and just said things like type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, the feeling of wellness.
Right.
So
this was all kind of...
It was kind of, I was kind of a little bit shocked because I had something so drastic, it was so important to me, that it really was, I wanted everyone to jump up and down about it.
Yeah,
and yet he was there just saying, yeah, okay, we hear this thing every day.
Yeah.
And I just thought, I didn't get the reaction I wanted there. And
my heart nearly exploded.
I know,
Yeah.
I just thought, well, okay, fine, great. But what I wanted to do was to buy more and to continue to buy more.
Yeah.
And I kind of sat back, and everyone around me, a lot of people around me, and the previous business and current business at that point I was involved in, I was, let's just say, financially secure. And it wasn't a business of passion, it was a business just about making money, earning extra cash, and just enjoying life.
Yeah.
But there was no heart or soul within that business. And
Yeah.
I found something that was so personal to me that I really wanted to shout about it. I really wanted to share it with others. How and why and where, at that point I didn't know. So after a few months I went back over to America to see the company, and I said, look, I really want to take a lot of products back to the UK. I want to share this with people around me. I just want others to try it and see what they say. So I did. I bought a lot of stock, brought it back, and I started doing some research. Not necessarily with a view to set a business up, but really with a view to see it's helped me so well, I almost owe it to others to share this experience. So hopefully others won't go through the pain.
So was your research actually just saying to friends of yours or people, here, try these and let me know what you think, or were you?
Well, literally, more? I mean, a lot of people around me knew my story.
Yeah.
They knew what happened to me, and then I said, okay, in some cases I'll buy you some and you can try. And I knew some nutritionists and some other people that were involved in these types of wellness industries, and I just wanted to share it with them to get their professional opinion. Mine was a personal opinion. It was personal to me, and I wanted to get others' opinions and almost share my experiences, passing on good news. Same corny old phrase, you saw a good film, you will tell someone about it.
Yeah.
I found a product that saved my life.
Yeah.
I want to tell the world about it.
Yeah, sure.
And this is really what I was trying to do. And it got to the point where, I'd shared it with enough people that they had enough good, benefits with people that they knew, but they were coming back to me saying, Peter, you've got something special here, and you're here for a reason. And you've really got to find that reason and follow your heart. And as the months went by, I just thought to myself, I've really got to go out there and start to tell people about this in a much bigger way than what I'm doing now.
Right.
So I popped back out to America, and I tried to arrange some sort of exclusive for supplying the product to people within the UK, and I ended up negotiating the purchase of the company. So I bought the business basically. I bought the rights to the product, I bought the business.
Wow.
And brought it back into the UK. Really at that point didn't know the best way I was going to share my benefits and spread the word, and I stepped back into what I knew best and what I've been hugely successful with, and that's in effect word of mouth through the type of method that we have at the moment, and that really was the start of it.
Right, fantastic. So what I genuinely, really kind of relish about this business is I've had the same experience. When I came to see you, I took one of these, I noticed my energy changing within 20 seconds. And as a result, I couldn't help myself actually by talking to people about it. So One of the things I said at the beginning of this was that this is a company which is on a mission. This is a company which is doing something that matters.
Yes.
So where do you see this going, and what does matter? Why does this matter?
There's nothing more passionate in life than life itself. Life matters, and to share something that may be so small with anybody, and to see them actually enjoy such significant fundamental benefits to their health is just so rewarding. I'll go right back to the earlier months when I was in hospital when my accident first happened. I said to one of the nurses there, you know, here we are, all these people in this orthopaedic ward with loads of broken bones and problems, and you've got such a, you know, an awful job looking after us. What's your reward? You know, because at the time, I believe even still today, nurses really don't get paid, in my view, what they're worth.
Sure.
I mean, excellent, excellent people. And this girl said one thing to me that really, really stood out, and I still remember it today. She said, you know, someone like you from a motorcycle accident will come in, you know, on a trolley as a bag of bones, and when you leave my ward, you will leave on crutches. And that is so rewarding to see that we've been part of that healing process. Now, I'm not saying here that we're part of a healing process. We're here as a prevention. This is all about prevention. This isn't about a cure or any nonsense like that. This is about giving the body what nature intended and helping to prevent the issues that we have today. Every single food that we eat today is demineralised. There is no such thing as a diet that contains the minerals the body needs. So by giving the body those minerals that it so desperately needs, it can help prevent the onslaught of so many different problems. And sitting from where I sit today and listening to the people that I speak to, real genuine people like you and I, Paul, people that we interact with, and hearing the benefits that they receive is just so rewarding. You cannot but share this, and this is an absolutely fundamental part to life, not just a diet fad or anything like that. This is absolutely critical to optimum health, and it's where life starts. The air that we breathe, the water we drink, hopefully both clean, and the minerals that we consume, then everything else is secondary.
So the opinion that I'm beginning to form is that there are two things. One is that minerals seem to activate the body. It might sound a strange word, but it seems that it allows the body's own healing process to kick in.
Absolutely.
And the second thing, therefore, is that, because I don't know whether you've mentioned this or not, I can't remember, but what I've also discovered is that if you're not properly mineralised, then your body cannot absorb vitamins and other nutrients appropriately. So people who think, I always thought vitamins was where it's at, but having not just taken them and experienced the difference, having then done my own little bit of research, I see that it seems as though, nutritionally wise, you might also be causing not so much a revolution, but people recognising the fact that actually, first and foremost, you have to mineralise and then you add anything onto that. Is that fair comment?
It is fair comment, and the word revolution is quite an interesting word. I would say actually that the world and the marketplace that we're in has become so well educated that it's actually forgotten the very basics. Those very simple fundamentals that we grew up with as children, and our parents and their parents, they grew up with some very, very basic fundamentals with foods. We've lost sight of that. We've become too complicated in our world of creating something special, that those real fundamentals have been forgotten. And we're merely messengers. I see that we're messengers, saying that there were once foods that grew in our soils that were, you know, mineralised as they should have been, that aren't today. So the minerals in our soils have gone. They're not in the foods we eat. That's fundamental. I refer to the minerals like a spark plug in a car engine. And the vitamins and the proteins and the carbs are like the fuel, the oil, and indeed the wheels. Without those spark plugs, nothing else works. And minerals to the body, absolutely so fundamental, critical in fact, that every single process that takes place, and there are millions and millions of tiny electrical processes taking place every second, every one of those relies on minerals and different complexes of minerals for that to happen. So you take one away, or indeed take a bunch away, there will be compromise. And compromise is what we're starting to see by the way of subclinical disease. And subclinical disease is a term that is used for the gradual breaking down of the systems that will eventually lead to the signs and symptoms. For example, like joint pain, like type 2 diabetes. So what we need to do is we need to give our body the preventative nutrients so it can repair itself.
Okay, so where do you see this going now? I mean, you know, I've been involved with this business for a few months and I've seen what is already extraordinary growth going on. Where are you going?
The product is something everybody needs. Indeed, plants need minerals. So the scope that we have is absolutely enormous. We are a British-based company. We will step out into other countries around the world, obviously America, Australia. First and foremost, we've got to ensure that we are solid and stable here. Our growth is absolutely tremendous. Month on month, we're experiencing around 20% growth per month compound, which is just tremendous. And we're actually looking at ways that we can take the knowledge and information into Europe in a much better way, and also we're just working on taking that into America at this point in time. As far as our customer base is concerned, then there isn't anybody, every single living, breathing soul on this planet today needs minerals for optimum health. And put aside all the other nutrients you can buy. We say to people, before you take your vitamin C's and before you take any of the other supplements, ensure your diet is good from a perspective of fruit and veg, mineralise, and then see exactly what your body requires at a later stage. In most cases, once the body is mineralised, most other nutrients that the body needs, we will actually get from our diets.
Right, okay. Can anybody not take these?
There's no person or animal indeed that does not need it. The question there, Paul, is would you say, does anybody not need to eat fruit and veg?
Right.
Okay, so everybody needs minerals.
Right.
We've had mothers that are pregnant taking minerals. Indeed, as far as babies are concerned, we do suggest that babies don't take minerals until they're actually onto solids. And even then, the mother really needs to call to see what the best amount would be. But absolutely everybody needs minerals.
Okay, okay. So, here we are now, I'm being polite, considerable years later.
Certainly are, many years later, many tens of years later.
Many tens of years later. So, coming back to the fact the doctor said to you, when you're in your late teens, that by the time you get to your late 20s, early 30s, you'll be in a wheelchair. Clearly there's no wheelchair. So, how are you?
Do you know, I'm grateful. I really, really got to say I do feel great. 30 years was the cut-off point. I'm more than 20 years beyond that, and still no signs of being relegated to a wheelchair. And I believe in my future life there will not be any need for me to go back to any such thing. I feel absolutely fantastic. Just about everything in life, I sincerely believe, is down to the minerals that I consumed in my earlier years and still consume every single day now. And over the years, and working with the people that I've worked with and touching other people's lives in the way that I have with these minerals has really taught me one thing, is that without these minerals, the improvements and the benefits that I have seen, along with the other people that I have actually worked with and as I mentioned, come in contact with, would never have been as great. Where would I be today had I not been mineralised? I would be dead.